Alrighty, another Final Fantasy video in the bin, in the dunzos, in the finished pile. So it's time for another ranking, and we actually have enough jobs to do a proper tier list instead of a ranking video like we did for FF1 and FF2. So I am going to be doing a tier list for the Final Fantasy 3 jobs, but disclaimer, the Final Fantasy 3 jobs are weird to tier because for the most part, the majority of jobs are either they get used in the early game and then strictly outclassed, or they strictly outclass other jobs, or they fall into like the third scenario where they're usually not very useful, but there are some like fights designed for them. In the case of like the Scholar Dragoon, Dark Knight, fights that are specifically you're supposed to bring this person in. So I don't know how, because I was initially going to factor availability in, right? And I think I still am, because I do think it's important to look at things like, Warrior, right, is strictly worse than like, well, not strictly, but mostly worse than like Knight, Dragoon, that sort of stuff, right? Monk to Black Belt, I think, is a better example, right? Where it's a strict upgrade. But Monk is around for the first two crystals. You get the Monk during the Wind Crystal. Monk is around for like the first half of the game. It's not until you get the Water Crystal that you can upgrade to Black Belt. So does that make Black Belt like better than Monk? I mean, maybe. But that doesn't mean Monk is like useless just because it's outclassed, right? But at the same time, it does feel like it would be very, very silly to put like Sage and Ninja in like C tier because availability, they're only around for one dungeon, when it's like, yeah, but the dungeon was designed such that you have a team of like exclusively them, or maybe Magus and Devout if you like care about spell slots, right? So it's like, I don't really know how to factor availability in. I think I'm just kind of gonna go with vibes off of it, but basically, I'm not gonna discount a job from being useful if it's useful during some stretch of the game, and I'll decide when I get to them whether Sage and Ninja get to be in S tier, because I feel like they should be. I think, the looking at the Devout, Magus, and Summoner, there's definitely more of a like, these guys are around just for Eureka, right? Like, I think when someone's around for such a short period of time before getting outclassed, then that's an availability issue. So rather than looking at like how much of the game they miss, it's like how much of the game are they in before they're pointless, I guess. Ultimately, these tier lists they're just for fun, right? So it doesn't super matter, but I've been racking my brain. That's why this one's coming out late. But we got an easy one to start out. Based on the community polls I did, some people will be upset, but Onion Knight is an F tier job. But you can't blame it. It's, it's the absence of a job. It is functionally the lack of a job. Now, it has the worst stats of any job. It can't use that many weapons and armor. It has no special abilities. It is the absence of a job, right? So you might wonder why people will be mad, why S tier almost fucking won on the community poll. And that's because there's a joke/Easter egg with Onion Knight, wherein it gains enormous stats starting at like level 90. For context, the level you beat like the final dungeon in is like 50 to 60, maybe 70 if you're doing excessive grinding, right? But level 90, it starts getting ridiculous stats, and by the time it reaches level 99, it has the highest stats in the game. So that sounds, already that sounds like, okay, but why are we grinding that fucking much? If you're level 99, any combination of jobs can beat things. But it actually gets worse for the Onion Knight because the grind is not the beginning, it is the start. Onion Knight cannot wield basically any equipment. I think Mithril Sword and Leather Armor are the highest tier of armor and sword and like weapon that it can wield. And those are found in like the first area, the first dungeon, where you don't even have black magic at that point in the game. That's how early it is. So it is severely under-equipped, and based on the way that Final Fantasy IV's formulas work, the majority of both your damage and durability come not only from, not from your stats, but they come from your weapon and your armor. Even if you have super high stats, having a bad weapon means you'll be out-damaged by people with lower stats than you, but better weapons. Because I think it's like 1/4 of your strength, whereas like weapon is just straight ability, and also the weapon has a higher cap than your strength cap. So even if it were 1-to-1, which it's not, it would outclass it, right? So you're dealing shit damage. You can fix this, but it requires a second grind, so we're grinding even longer. This is a droppable set of equipment, the Onion equipment. Onion sword, you want 2 of them for each Onion Knight. Onion armor, so you need 8 Onion swords, 4 Onion armor, 4 Onion helmet. And that is the Onion set, and that is the strongest equipment in the game, and it can only be wielded by the Onion Knight. And it drops in the final dungeon. The final dungeon of the game. And it only drops from rare enemies, and it is a rare drop from those rare enemies. For context, I never even encountered the enemies that drop it in my playthrough, and I was playing with encounters on, and I just never bumped into them because they are rare. And it's a rare drop from those rare enemies. So you would have to do a second grind, but also you have to already be in the final dungeon. If you're already in the final dungeon, that means for 99% of the game, probably not 99% of the game, but at least 95% of the game, the Onion Knight has been dead weight. And then you've done an excessive grind, and then a second excessive grind, just to get it to the point where, yeah, it can do stuff, but you know who else can do stuff at level 99? Ninja. Fuck, Warrior would probably kill the final boss at level 99. Yeah, Onion Knight's not very good. It also just, like, doesn't have any abilities, right? Like, even once you get the Onion gear, it's just hit stuff with Meat Stick. And it hits stuff with Meat Stick good, but, like, so does everyone at that point. At level 99, I'd rather have, like, Ninja, because then he can also throw stuff, right? Or Scholar, he can use weapons, or well, probably not Scholar, but you know what I mean, right? Onion Knight is not designed to be a good class. It's a joke class. You know, their damage sprite is them crying. They're fat babies. They're just little babies. So I don't know what to say other than that. Like, Onion Knight, the number of people coping on, like, let's just grind to 99. I literally wonder how many of them actually did. Do those people think Edward is the strongest unit in FF4? Because, like, I know, Final Fantasy fans might have different ideas of things than Fire Emblem fans, is all I'm saying. Yeah, F tier. Don't use it after the Wind Crystal. Like, it's not supposed to be used. Black Mage, I think Black Mage is, like, a solid A tier? So Final Fantasy has the spell slot system, like from D&D and from FF1, where instead of having mana, you have spell slots. There's no ethers as well. So the Black Mage is pretty limited by the amount of spells that it can cast. And that makes it, like, fighting random enemies, like, while going through dungeons, a little bit difficult. It is one of the few ways to do spread damage, especially early on. And you don't get Black Magic until after the first dungeon, but that's not a huge deal. Like, just don't, just don't use the Black Mage before then. Black Mage is also, at least in the Pixel Remaster, capable of using bows, and arrows are no longer limited ammo. So if you put the Black Mage in the back row, give them a bow, their spells will be less powerful, but they can do, like, standard attacks in the dungeon, and then you just switch to a rod or a staff. I forget whether they're staffs or rods. But you switch to, like, a magical weapon, right? Before the boss, and now you've got, like, magic damage. They can take advantage of elemental weakness. Even with a bow, against regular enemies, like, just doing spread damage when you need to is nice. It's a little bit unfortunate to be limited by the spell slots, but in general, they have enough spell slots to make do. And I think they are perfectly solid. They are also one of the few classes that you get at the Wind Crystal that does not have a outclass, that does not have something that strictly outclasses it until the Earth Crystal. And for the first time you get something that is even fulfilling the same roles as it is the water crystal. So it doesn't even have competition aside from like red mage and scholar if you're coping scholar. It doesn't really even have competition until like, because red mage is just worse at its job. And so whenever you want elemental damage, it's kind of just the go-to. You can also use attack items, but attack items are not purchasable in this game. You do have to farm them with a thief, which is a whole ordeal we'll talk about when we get to thief. But I think it's just, you want at least one on your team at basically all times. Maybe a geomancer instead, but even then, like, they're sort of interchangeable. On the other hand, white mage is truly irreplaceable for, I would say, about 7/8, maybe 9/10 of the game. Like, up until you get the earth crystal, white mage is the healer du jour. There's one other option for healing, but otherwise, like, it's white mage or bust, basically. And every team wants a healer. I mean, like, there are certain fights where it's just DPS, like Garuda or whatnot, but almost every team wants a healer at all times. They also get access to attack magic. They're not as good at it as black mage, but having, like, the white magic, the air attacks, right, and holy eventually, is, it's something that sort of rounds up the toolkit. Yeah, just, always fucking goated, always pretty fucking goated. Red mage, unfortunately, how the mighty have fallen. I had this thing super high in Final Fantasy 1. Is it as low as D tier? It has like it is still the Jagan, but it's a Jagan, like, it's more in the sense of Rev Gunter than it is like Seth, right? It gets the White Slayer, which is a sword only red mages can use. And in the first dungeon, most enemies are undead, and you don't have any black magic yet, but you do have Cure. You can get access to Cure. So having a red mage with White Slayer to, like, kill undead, and white mages or red mages spamming Cure to attack the undead magically is pretty alright. But then as soon as you get access to black magic, it has less MP. It's just not worth the trade-off. Like, you just probably want to run a black mage, like a dedicated black mage and white mage, and then 2 physical characters in whatever classes you desire. I guess during, like, some of the mini dungeons, right? Like, it can be a mini dungeon thing. But even then, like, just run multiple black mages, right? So, I don't know, it just doesn't seem... I feel like after that first dungeon where you fight the Jin, red mage kind of lacks usefulness. I never found myself needing to roll compress. With 4 characters... you just have a lot of options, and the job system is not particularly deep, right? If there was a deeper job system, I can see the use for red mage because it does roll compression, even though it's worse at its job than black and white. Like, you could still be like, okay, but I do have it. Like, it gives me basically 2 for the price of 1. But here, like, I found myself, I always felt like I had a superfluous party member. So, like, the bargain of make my party member worse to get a 5th party member? I don't know. That just doesn't seem good to me. Fighter. Okay, Fighter is not strictly outclassed by Knight, because there's a couple of weapons it can use that Knight can't, like some bows and stuff. But even then, it's like lower tier bows. In general, Fighter's like it's one of 2 possible physical attackers for the first, like, quarter of the game, because it's from Wind Crystal to Fire Crystal, but there's a lot of game between Wind Crystal and Fire Crystal. You fight the Jin, then you climb the mountain, jump off, go through the Gnomish Tunnel. You got to go through the Rat Tunnel after that, and then after you've calmed the seas, you sail to the dwarves. You go through the dwarf area, fight the Thief of Fire. Then you go through the Fire Shrine and fight Salamander. And then you get Fire Crystal, I believe. Oh no, I missed part. There's also the tower. You gotta go to the tower too, the Frog Tower. Yeah, so there's a lot going on where Fighter's like one of your 2 physical attackers, and you get plenty of weapons for it. So like running 2 monks isn't necessarily ideal because you do have weapons for it. I do like monk better, but monk gets outclassed. Oh no, monk gets outclassed later. Fighter gets outclassed sooner. Yeah, I think fighter is like, it's better than red mage. You do want to run it for like the first portion of the game, but I think it's a solid C tier, whereas monk is closer to B tier. Monk isn't as defensive as fighter, but it also doesn't cost money. Like, it just does barehanded strikes, right? And it scales better in terms of like attack power. It's going to be the big main bruiser, and I can see a world where I run 2 monks. I can't really see a world where I run 2 fighters. Like, you're buying more equipment than you need. I guess the main thing fighter can do is against Salamander. I did switch to multiple fighters against Salamander, because Salamander is one of those classic FF3 bosses that spams the same fucking attack the entire time. It spams a fire attack, and just being able to equip all the anti-fire armor. I believe it's ice armor that prevents fire damage. Which makes sense, but it threw me off because I'm like, but fire armor is supposed to protect from fire damage. That's what video games say. Also, since the template is a little bit, we're going to do this. There we go. Perfect. Fit everything now. All right. Knight. I think Knight is probably up there with Monk. It is a solid damage dealer. I think it's probably the best of the physical classes. And it's around for a long time, too. I can see it in A tier. I'm going to put it in B for now. I'll think about it. It's above Monk, at the very least. It is basically a strict upgrade on Warrior. It's the sword and board fighter, but it also has the passive ability that when an ally is in critical health, it blocks and takes damage for them. It's a little bit less offensive for that reason. But it sort of trades off with, like, team conservation, right? It can protect your actual damage dealers while also being a decent damage dealer itself. And it sort of role compresses that of, like, it's a physical bruiser while also being a tank. You do get other options for both of those roles, even within this crystal period, but I don't think any of them are as good. Speaking of which, Thief, I'm going to throw Thief in D tier. So, stealing rates in Final Fantasy III, like, before anything, stealing rates are abysmal. I don't know what the actual percentage is. I've found varying resources online. The highest I saw something say was it was 25%, and the lowest I saw was 10%. My guess is the truth is either somewhere in the middle, or who fucking knows. It does not appear to be documented well. And there's a lot of conflicting information. So I can only go off of my personal experience, but within my experience, the steal rates were very bad. There are no unique items to be stolen. So the main reason you run a thief, because its combat is not very good. It gets like boomerangs, so it can do some back row stuff, which is nice. But I think it's doing less damage for you than a monk or even ranger or knight would at that time. Its main reason to exist is to steal things. It can't steal any unique items, so it's just helping your economy. But most of what it steals is like potions. That's because, and the reason for this, there is actually a reason for this. It has to get like to higher tiers within the job. Once it gets to job level 30, which is an absurd grind, by the way, it takes a long ass time to get enough JP for job level 30. Then it can start stealing the tier 2 items, and that is where you get attack items from. Now, there is the dream team of Thief and Scholar. I'm going to move Scholar up because we're going to judge you next. But there is the dream team of Thief and Scholar. Scholar powers up the attack items. Thief steals the attack items. You sort of farm them, loop, grind a whole bunch of stuff, right? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this when Black Mage exists? We're devoting 2 character slots to make an off-brand version of what could have been 1 character slot, right? If you're worried about the number of spell slots available, in addition to just using the bow trick, we're using 2 characters to get these attack items, right? Just make 2 characters a Black Mage. Then you have double the spell slots, because you got spell slots on both of them. You don't need to use all of them, right? You can even have, one person using a bow, the other one using their spell slots. When they run out, they reclass into a different job, and then they are, you know, then you have the other one be your primary caster, right? So there's not really a reason to sort of commit to the theft. It takes a long time to even get to the point that you can start stealing the items. And then once you are able to start stealing the items, you still have to grind it out to get enough that, because if you're worried about spell slots, right? You need to have enough items to actually have more attacks than the black mage, right? If you don't steal a fuck ton, like a metric fuck ton of attack items, then you're just doing a worse job than the black mage. So you have to grind out that much, like steal that many. You have to deal with the obnoxious steal rates, and then you basically have to leave the thief in your party your entire playthrough until you abandon the scholar, because the scholar's gonna keep needing refills in order to actually do any decent damage, because its only other gimmick, because it attacks with books. Books are elemental, so they technically can like go on weaknesses, but they're so low power they do nothing. Its other gimmick is just checking for enemy HP and weaknesses. And half the time it can't fucking tell you that. I'm gonna put it in F tier. There are a couple of boss fights designed around it. But even then, I don't think it's worth bringing the scholar. I guess, like, you just devote a party slot. Like I said, it feels like there's a dead party slot sometimes. The scholar can be that dead party slot. There's a world where you try to make it work with thief and scholar, but I think that world is always just like, it's the off-brand version of black mage. Ranger is another class that, like, they were cooking, but it's undercooked. I think it's solid C tier. I'm gonna put it under fighter because fighter doesn't have competition when it exists. Ranger is a backline bow fighter, and it has the barrage command where it fires 4 random attacks at enemies. This doesn't cost any MP or anything. Well, there's no MP. It doesn't cost anything. It's a command it can do, but it sort of spreads the damage. It's going to be less damage than if it attacked someone. It's kind of interesting, and like some of the bows are pretty strong. Since arrows are no longer consumable items, Ranger's definitely better than it was in the older versions, but it still doesn't feel great. Losing out on white magic from the NES version, right? While it made Ranger more unique, I do think it made it worse, even if it wasn't good in the NES version either. But that is, I believe, all of the fire crystal jobs as well. So we're moving right along to the water crystal. Evoker is going to be keeping Onion Knight and Scholar company right here in F tier. Evoker is an RNG job, so it gets summons. You have to purchase the summons, and bear in mind, summons are not available as immediately when you get out of the water crystal. You have to beat Goldor before you can fly to the town that sells summons. But if you accidentally fly towards the Dragoon town, your ship gets shot down, and then you have to beat Dragoon town in order to get to the summons area. So it's possible that buying summons, the campaign doesn't naturally bring you to buy summons until even later than that. But once you get them, the Evoker has a bunch of RNG effects with the summons, and basically not having control over who you target, what ability you're doing, is just not very good. There's, like, in theory, they're slightly above rate, considering the Evoker's, like, MP availability, or, like, spell slot availability, right? But in practice, even if you come to a situation, you're like, okay, this either heals, which I would appreciate, or it does damage, which I appreciate. Like, you figure out, this is no matter what happens, I still like it. Not being able to control means you can't plan things. And again, I'd much rather just use one of the other mages. Like, white mage and black mage still being the goats. Now, Bard, this one, okay. I will fully admit I underrated Bard in my playthrough. I kind of tried them out a little bit, thought they were bad, threw them away. Looking more into how Bard works for the tier list, I think that they are solid. But I want to say I didn't use one. And for that reason, I don't know if how accurate this ranking is going to be. I think it's like a high C, low B. I'm going to err on high C. It's sort of an alternative to the White Mage. It's very weird. It's one of the only jobs that gains new abilities as it levels up. Other jobs get better at their job. I mentioned the Thief, when he's stealing, he steals higher value loot. Spellcasters deal more damage. You know, the Monk and Black Belt's fist formulas go up. So other jobs sort of passively get better, but this one literally unlocks new abilities. It's the only one to do that. And it unlocks, so it starts out with a song that heals. I believe it's percentage based. It's like 20%, which if you've got 2 bards, like you do have to commit 2 slots to bard, but if you got 2 bards, it's like as you level up, it becomes higher percentage. I think it turns into like 40 or whatever, and it can become just a heal battery for you, right? To sort of rival the White Mage. And then it does also have abilities to boost attack and boost defense, both magical and physical on both accounts. And then its last ability is Edward's like imply random statuses, which is garbage. The reason I have it on C tier is it just feels like a lot of work building it up, especially since you've almost certainly got a White Mage who's like super powered up because you've been, you know, using them the whole time. So it becomes like, it just feels like it's an ordeal. Once you get it online, it's like a decent side grade to it, but if you already have a version that is, you know, superior to how the Bard starts out, training up for a side grade just doesn't sound super appealing to me, unless I was doing a replay, but I didn't really care for FF3, so, you know, I'm probably not going to do a replay. Black Belt's goated. I think Black Belt's an A tier above the Black Mage. It is unfortunate for the Monk that the Black Belt is basically just like better than it, but at least the Monk, unlike the Fighter, gets to stick around for longer. The Black Belt, it starts out, so it's sort of like the Bard to White Mage comparison, where the Black Belt is going to start out almost certainly with a lower scale than a Monk you've trained up. But it is worth training off because it's not so much of a downgrade, and you get access to Charge and Kick. Charge lets you build up your attack power. You could do it 2 times in a row. If you try a 3rd time, it'll self-destruct you and deal damage to yourself. But you can do it 2 times. So like 1 time it's 100%, or 1 time it boosts your power to 200%, 2 times it boosts your power to 300%. And it's only for your next 1 attack, but since you are, like, since it's factoring in enemies' defense, this more than doubles, like, it makes up for the turns you invest into it. Kick is also a physical AoE attack. This is usually not worth it, although in combination with Charge, especially against, like, replicating enemies, it potentially can be. There's some fun stuff you can do along that end of things. And also just, like, if you've weakened a bunch of enemies, having Kick finish them off. It's definitely better here than it was in FF4 with Yang's Kick. I don't know if it differs in later Final Fantasies. 4 is the last one I've played at time of recording. But yeah, it's I think it's niche but useful, and on top of just, again, being like the Monk, a solid bruiser, deals a ton of damage, single target, but most bosses are just 1 character, right? I think for the second half of the game, the Black Belt is just solid, carries you through. You should have one on every team. And unlike the Knight, it doesn't really have competition in that regard. The closest thing would be the Dragoon with Jump. And Jump is nice. You jump up on screen. It's kind of like the Charge. You jump up on screen, so you can't be targeted by anything. And then you land the next turn, and you deal increased damage compared to your attack. And it's extra good against, like, dragons and other flying characters or whatever. It's specifically designed for, like, the Garuda boss, and then there's another boss in, like, the duplicating cave that spams Thundara. So it's designed for that, where, like, you have a team of 4 Dragoons, and they all dodge things and whatever. You can also run it on your team, and Jump is cool. It makes healing a little bit annoying to manage, because you never know if you're going to heal your Dragoon before they jump, or if they're going to land before an attack goes off or whatever, right? Like, it's inconsistent. But you can do some cool stuff. Once you get the Blood Lances, like dual-wielding Blood Lances and jumping is kind of a good way to cheese a lot of bosses. I think it sort of falls off going forward. I like it less than the Black Belt, but not so much less. I'm going to put it under Knight. It is elevated somewhat by the fact that there's one gimmick boss that is required for it and one gimmick boss that is basically required for it. I think it's a worse option than Black Belt and Knight are, but not by a significant amount. Geomancer, on the other hand, I think is solid. I think it's a side grade for Black Mage. The way that it works, it's like Evoker, where all of its spells are random based on the terrain you're in. But the majority of them are AoE, so they'll just hit every enemy, right? None of them are like weird heals or runaways or whatever, right? They're all attack the enemy AoE. It doesn't have to deal with spell charges. It's weaker than the Black Mage in that regard, but it's infinite, and you don't have to like farm for it like the Scholar Thief combo, right? I think because it's only around starting at the Water Crystal, like it has to be ranked lower than Black Mage. He's around all game, but Geomancer is a solid side grade. I definitely think like Geomancer is very worthwhile to bring on a squad for a pretty long period of time. If I would not blame anyone for ditching their Black Mage and switching to Geomancer forever. Geomancer's worse against bosses because all the spells are AoE, right? But then just like go into a physical class for the boss, right? Like change your Geomancer into a Knight or Dragoon and have them, you know, go to physical damage then and just do magic in dungeons. And this is particularly good in like the split dungeons because split enemies, they'll duplicate themselves if they're hit with a physical attack by someone other than the Dark Knight. So you want to use magic against them, but then you waste all of your spell charges unless you're the Geomancer. And, you know, once you get a Dark Knight, then the Dark Knight is the answer, but you don't get Dark Knight equipment until after the first split dungeon, so Geomancer is kind of the GOAT for that period of game. I think it's definitely the top of B tier. I don't think it makes A tier, but I think it's the top of B tier. Viking is cool. So here's the thing, though. Viking is just worse at half of Knight's job, and it can't do the other half. It's not a DPS character. I think, if anything, like, it can use axes, right? But I think, if anything, you don't want to use axes. Just give it 2 shields. Make it super tanky. Physical attacks will deal 1 damage. The Knight, as I mentioned, can guard attacks. Only physical ones and only single target. I forgot that caveat. But that caveat's important because the Viking has a provoke ability where it can provoke enemies into attacking it. This has a fail chance, like it does have a roll. I think it's more successful the higher level your Viking is. But what you do with Viking, the ideal thing is dual shields, spam provoke, right? All the enemies will attack it instead of your other characters, so you don't need to have characters on critical to have them defend it. However, provoke doesn't change the enemy's behavior, so if they were going to cast a magic spell, they'll cast it, and provoke only calls physical. It also has a fail chance, and it won't protect against anything that the Knights does, and the Knights doesn't have a fail chance, it just only protects people at critical health. If you have a caster you want the Knight to protect, just have them start battle at critical HP. I think this is just worse than the Knight. I'm gonna put it under the Bard, under the Fighter, honestly. It's still solid. If, again, you know, I used it for a period of time, and it didn't feel... It just felt like a downgrade from the Knight, but it didn't feel useless in the way that some other jobs did. Like, you know, Ranger and Thief and whatnot. On the other hand, Dark Knight is straight trash, straight dookie. I think it's D tier, like, above Red Mage. It's around for so little of the game. So, it can only use katanas and the Excalibur, I think? Or, not the Excalibur. It can use one of the other swords. Not the Masamune, because that's a katana. Whatever. It can use, like, a legendary sword. I can't remember which one. I won't be asked to look it up. But basically, you only get its equipment for the last dungeon before Crystal Tower, right? So it basically exists for 1 dungeon, which is equivalent to Red Mage. At the very least, that dungeon is a gimmick dungeon, like how Dragoon has gimmick boss fights. That's a gimmick dungeon, where it's all the duplicating enemies again, and you could just run Geomancers, like that's a solid option. But Dark Mages, or Dark Knights, are the only physical attackers that don't cause the duplicators to duplicate, and they also have a sweep attack. It's like the kick, basically, where it'll, like, attack everyone, but it's less damage. It feels less useful because you can't do charge kick, and I like charge kick. Honestly, Black Belt felt better for dealing with the duplicating monsters than the Dark Knight, because I would just go charge, charge, kick, and the Geomancers have worn them down enough that even though the Black Belt's physical, it kills everything, and they won't clone themselves if they're killed. So yeah, just charge, charge, kick. It does Dark Knight's gimmick for it. And then you beat that one dungeon, and now it's Crystal Tower time. And in the Crystal Tower, you get access to the Earth Crystal spells, which in fairness really only outclass the Dark Mage and White Mage. You got Magus, Devout, and Summoner. I don't think these classes are very good either, because similar to the Dark Knight, they basically only exist for one dungeon. Because once you get Sage from Eureka, I mean, so it's not... Sage, it's weird. It's a weird choice, because I actually ran Devout and Magus for spell slots. Sage can use both white and black magic, but it has better stats, except for spell slots. It has less spell slots. So it's not a strict outclass, but I think most of the time, like, if you know what you're doing, if you don't, like me, only have one copy of Kiraja, you're gonna run multiple Sages, right? Instead of relying on the spell slots, right? So I think Magus is, like, D tier above Dark Knight. Devout, I'm going to put in the very bottom of C below Ranger, just because they're around for so little before they are ultimately outclassed by the Sage. The Sage can summon as well, and the Summoner... So, okay, maybe this is a hot take, but I think the Summoner is also pretty bad. It's better than the Evoker. It uses, like, the strongest version of the summons, but... If you realize that Evoker's shit, then you don't waste your money on the summons, right? Whereas, like, you have the black and white magic purchased already. The other thing is half of the summons require you to go on side quests. You have to fight, like, Bahamut and Odin and whatnot to get them as summons. Leviathan. And it just doesn't feel worth it to me. I think it's, like, probably around here-ish, D tier below Dark Knight. Again, because even if you, like, really fucking care about the summons, you would just run Sage instead. I think Sage is a solid B tier, like a high B. I'm gonna put it below Knight, because Knight exists for so long, and it's just kind of, like, really, really good at what it does. And then Ninja, I'm gonna put Ninja in S tier. If Ninja's S tier, Devout kind of has to be, or Sage kind of has to be A tier, right? I'm gonna put it, like, here. Ninja below White Mage, though, because basically the final dungeon is designed for ninjas and sages. The sage is replaceable by a, Devout or Magus, depending on, like, how much you care about the spell slots and stuff. The ninja is basically not replaceable. It has the best stats. It can use all the weapons. It can use the throw command to deal a ton of damage with the shurikens. Basically the only way that ninja is replaceable is if you ran a black belt and did, like, excessive grinding, or Onion Knight. But I don't think those are situations we're factoring in. And so, like, yeah, for that reason, I'm putting it below White Mage, because White Mage just pulls weight for so much more of the game. But I do think the Sage being both more replaceable, and also there's team compositions that go, like, 3 ninja, 1 sage, or 2 ninja, 2 sage. There's no 1 ninja. Like, you run the ninjas. You use all the best weapons. You can use every weapon. Just use your best weapons. Do your best stuff, right? There's other weird oddball strategies you can do for Cloud of Darkness, like the, double Blood Lance on all the Lagoons and stuff, but those require more grinding than just go fucking ninja. Yeah, that's the list. Bear in mind, I'm a fake gamer. I didn't beat the final boss because I didn't buy a second Kiraja and I was under-leveled. So, like, feel free to disregard my opinion for that reason. Bye.